You've probably heard the advice to delay Social Security until age 70. On paper, it seems smart to opt for the highest possible benefit, but when is it a bad idea? Welcome back to Ownership. I'm Nick Sapienza, Senior Advisor at Ritholtz. In today's video, I'll show you when delaying is a bad idea, how to think about it in the context of your complete picture, and how to decide when to take it for yourself. See, most retirees don't actually wait until 70, only about 10% do. The majority either take it as soon as possible or at full retirement age. So obviously this isn't just a math decision, it's emotional and behavioral. But for a lot of people, waiting until 70 really is the best move. You lock in the highest benefit, giving you the highest income floor. Your spouse gets a higher survivor's benefit. You create a greater tax window to do things like Roth conversions. There's no earnings penalty if you decide to work longer, and it better protects you from the biggest risk in retirement, which is basically living a long time. And every year you delay after 67 or full retirement, you're getting roughly an 8% raise per year. From ages 62 to 70, your monthly check grows by about 75%. So if you're healthy, have plenty of savings, and a relatively low withdrawal rate, say somewhere around 5% or lower, delaying is probably the smartest choice since you don't really need the income, which is not the case for most people. Nearly half of all senior citizens receive 50% or more of their income from Social Security, whereas almost 1 in 5 people ages 65 or older gets about 90% of their income from the program. For most retirees, Social Security isn't a supplement, it's almost everything. That's why this decision carries so much weight. And then there's the longevity insurance aspect of it. People are living longer today than at any point in history. The average life expectancy for men is roughly 88 years old, women is a little bit longer, and married couples is even longer than that. So there's a high likelihood that you will live longer than you expect, and you may need to pay for things like long-term care. And since long-term care is a high probability, high impact event, it makes sense to delay for the maximum benefit as a hedge. But there's always more to the story, so let's look at when delaying Social Security can actually backfire. Delaying Social Security doesn't make sense for everyone. If your health isn't great or if you don't have enough other assets to cover your spending needs comfortably, the math changes pretty quick. You may never actually reach the point where delaying pays off. But where it really backfires is when you're spending down your portfolio too quickly. You're pulling more from your investments while you wait for Social Security. So if the market crashes early in retirement, those withdrawals hit harder. It's one of the biggest risks people face early in retirement. But the key argument against delaying is what Derek Tharp points out. Most Social Security advice focuses on expected value or the total dollars over a lifetime. But they fall short on focusing on expected utility or how valuable those dollars actually feel when spent earlier versus when they are spent later in life. In plain English, a dollar at 65 might buy you more life satisfaction than a dollar will at age 85. Which is true for so many people. Social Security dollars might matter more when you're younger, more active, or simply trying to sleep better at night through a volatile market. And remember, retirement typically goes through 3 phases. You have your go-go years for the first portion of your retirement. The second phase, you have your slow-go years, and then you have your no-go years. In the go-go years, we're doing the majority of our spending. It's the youngest and healthiest and maybe most active we will be in our retirement. And then we start to slow down a little bit. Maybe we're less mobile. Maybe we've traveled as much as we want to. Maybe it's just harder to get around these days, and so our spending decreases. And the spending decreases in the no-go phase by approximately 20 to 30%. Although, of course, we can have unexpected healthcare costs or long-term care costs that can ratchet that spending back up. But the point here is that we can't forget about the psychology of it, that most people are comfortable spending their Social Security check rather than selling from their portfolio. And we want to segment our spending. We want to spend more in the first phase of our retirement with planned decreases along the way. Social Security is a foregone conclusion. It's a guaranteed income stream with a balance that we don't see fluctuate on a daily basis. So having the paycheck really helps us actually enjoy the money that we've saved because we are more likely to spend it and enjoy those dollars. So although we can quantify the cost or benefit of when we claim benefits, we can't put a price on that peace of mind. If delaying until 70, which is just 3 more years from 67, means that we are losing sleep, or we're watching the market every day, or we're just stressed about spending, well, that's a signal. All that stress can take away from the very years that we're supposed to be enjoying it the most. So when does it actually make sense to take Social Security at full retirement age or earlier? Well, when the plan or your peace of mind benefits from having that income sooner rather than later, or from a very practical sense when it significantly reduces the risk in your portfolio by cutting your withdrawal rate down. For example, we focus on cash flow planning with each client, and if we look at this chart, we can see that taking benefits earlier could lower our portfolio withdrawal rate by about 1 to 2% per year. And that alone can be a huge help in something like a bear market. So we can see that here, starting benefits earlier allows us to front load spending while pulling less from our portfolio. Now, on the other hand, we may just want to have this as a lever that stays in our back pocket. We don't necessarily tap into Social Security. We let the market make up for our aggressive spending, but we know that we have that lever that we can activate. We can activate Social Security at any time in the future if we do enter a period of low or negative returns. But it makes sense if you just want to enjoy the freedom that those dollars give you earlier in retirement. Maybe that means more travel or helping family more often, or just not worrying so much about the next market dip or what the market's doing on a daily basis. So Social Security can kind of play the role of a behavioral hedge. And for some people, taking it early is all about control. You get the flexibility to choose what to do with the money, whether that's spending it, saving it, or investing it yourself. See, there's no single right answer here. The right time to claim isn't just about maximizing the check, it's about aligning the timing with your health, your lifestyle, and of course, your tolerance for uncertainty. And then there are key risks that we have to consider, like opportunity costs. We've talked about the benefit of delaying and the increased benefit of that Social Security payment, but what's the opportunity cost of pulling funds from our portfolio in the meantime to cover our living expenses until that Social Security amount kicks in? How much long-term growth do we sacrifice? And then there's policy risk. Now, we're not predicting it, but future tax or benefit changes, they are possible. It's a real risk and something that we want to keep in the back of our minds. It's not going to be the single driver of our decision to delay or take early, but we want to be mindful of this as a potential risk. And then, of course, there's the optionality piece, which I lean on most. It's the ability to choose whether or not to draw from our portfolio rather than being forced to. So like I said, we don't have to necessarily activate Social Security based on our prediction about the future, our life expectancy, or any government or policy changes. We can just keep it in our back pocket as an additional lever to protect our portfolio and our peace of mind during a series of less than ideal returns. And of course, we have to place importance on the psychology and lifestyle sort of utility piece. We know that money holds a greater value when it's used for experiences, and especially so during our active retirement years. Studies show that early consumption can outweigh delayed financial optimization. So think about when you're 90 years old. What would you regret more? Would you regret not making better use of the money that you had? Or would you regret not optimizing your financial picture and optimizing for the highest possible Social Security payment? And here's how we look at it within the context of a financial plan. When I build a plan for a client, we don't directly start with, should we delay until 70? We start with, what do you actually want this next phase of life to look like? Then we plug in the numbers. What are your fixed expenses versus your lifestyle goals? How much of that can your portfolio cover safely? What does your withdrawal rate look like if you delay versus if you take it now? So when we model this in a plan, we don't just look at the Social Security decision in isolation. We test how it fits into everything else, and we build a few scenarios side by side. One where you take benefits early, one where you file for retirement, one where you stagger if you're married, where one spouse claims earlier and the other spouse delays, and one scenario where maybe you both delay. This lets us see which version actually helps you sleep best at night, not just which one gives us the highest possible ending dollar at the end of our plan, or in other words, at the end of our life. Sometimes the lower benefit plan wins because it's less stressful and it's more sustainable depending on the environment that you retire into. But then we stress test them for a few key risks: market drops, inflation, longevity, to see how your total income, taxes, and ultimately how your peace of mind might hold up if we were to live in periods similar to 2008, or say periods like 1966 to 1982, where we saw high inflation and low real returns from stocks. Let's take Derek's example, showing the impact of filing Social Security at 62 versus 70 during the Great Financial Crisis. In a nutshell, Social Security is another lever that you can pull to help sustain your income, your portfolio, and of course, your mental state. I know I keep harping on that, but really important that we maintain that behavioral edge during things like a bear market, which we will surely encounter throughout your retirement. So I've just explained why delaying until age 70 is a bad idea, but I'm still not advocating for you to file at 62 and opt for a 30% reduction in benefits. This is a high probability, high impact event paired with an unknowable future. The goal is to make an informed decision rather than an emotional one by striking a balance between data and real life experiences. So if you're in decent health, the odds are you'll live longer than you expect, so delaying can still make a lot of sense. However, if you have health concerns or just want to enjoy the money while you're still young and active, it might be better to start earlier. By earlier, maybe not 62, but before 70. Next, we look at your portfolio. Can it comfortably cover your spending while you wait? Or would starting Social Security now take pressure off of your investments? Finally, think about flexibility and peace of mind. Social Security is a steady paycheck with cost of living adjustments. Your portfolio is flexible, so balance them in a way that gives you both income and options. What that could mean in real terms is if my plan withdrawals exceed around maybe 6% or so, then I'd be more keen on tapping into Social Security. At the end of the day, the optimal answer is the one that fits your life best, and sometimes that means it isn't the highest possible outcome on a spreadsheet. If you found this helpful, subscribe and let us know what you'd like to see next. I'm Nick Sapienza. Thanks for watching Ownership.